Boom! We're live, everybody. Hey, welcome to Red TV Live in Conversation. I'm Peter Clarke. How are you? How are you today? I'm so glad that you're here joining us live on Red TV in Conversation. We're broadcasting live throughout the internet universe. That's what we're doing right now, throughout the universe. And we're also simulcasting on a brand new channel over my shoulder there. You'll see 347 The Juice. Yeah, so there you go. We're trying to get the message out right across the world. So thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it. Haven't been on here in a little while. You know, the Red TV Live and the radio station, they intertwine with each other. And boy, did they ever consume a lot of time. That is for sure. So, hey, I just wanted to give you a quick reminder. Please, if you like what you see and hear, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, these kinds of things, please share with the world. We're trying to amplify voices like that beautiful soul right over there. We'll chat with him in a few seconds and some great information. So I want to make sure we get it out there. Please do that. And hey, 347 The Juice, brand new audio channel that I've created. Would love for you to learn a little bit more about that. So all you have to do, here's a little information for you. Boom, right there. There he is right there. Brand new channel. And if you're watching this on your computer right now, all you have to do is scan that code. Okay, scan that code, download the free app, and then search for 347. That's it. Simple as that. It's pretty straightforward. And we get to do this just to communicate with one another. Listen, I so appreciate you being here. Thanks for all the comments. I'll get to everything. If you have any questions for our guest today, please put it in the comments of our live feed. If you're listening to this on 347 The Juice, I super appreciate you tuning in. If you know how to get a hold of me through texting and so on, please, if you want to send me anything that we can talk to Rollin about, that would be fantastic. We have a short amount of time with this guy. This guy's super busy. I mean, I never take his time for granted. So let's jump right into it. Let me see if I can get this. I can never get the essence, truly the essence, and maybe Rollin can help me with this. And he's done so much, and he's inspired so many people when it comes to what we're going to be talking about today, HeartMath. But today's guest, Dr. Rollin McCraty, he's a pioneer scientist and the director of research at HeartMath Institute. And they're known for its groundbreaking work, if you will, in heart and brain connection, emotional self-regulation and personal coherence. That's what they're all about. So Rollin has spent decades exploring the rhythms of the heart. That's what we're going to be talking about today. The rhythm of the heart's influence on our brain and vice versa, of course, our emotions, our health, and even our relationships to one another and the planet. We're interconnected. You're going to find that out. His work is helping to bridge the gap between science and spirituality. I think that's what's so fascinating about this, is that we always talk about things from the heart and the mind and the brain, but and it falls into spirituality. And then, of course, it can be backed up by science. And Rollin's going to be helping us with that today. We're going to talk about the science of the heart and the power of coherence and tuning into your own heart's intelligence that can transform your everyday life. That's what we want to talk about today. I want to welcome my very good friend, Rollin McCraty. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Peter, I'm doing great.
Was that okay?
You're one of my favorite hosts to do interviews with. You just really are. You're always so heart-centered, as you say, and upbeat. And anyway.
That is super kind. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. That's very kind. Listen, likewise, I was going back in time, Rollin. I was looking around and I was thinking, gosh, I think now you've become officially the most active guest on Red TV Live. So this is, I think, your fourth appearance on the show. So I super appreciate that. November 3rd, 2022, December 15th, 2022, and October 30th, 2024. There you go. You've been around. It's fantastic. Hey, first of all, how have you been? Are you healthy and well, and everything's okay? Please tell me that.
Everything's okay. Healthy, well.
All right, that's fantastic. I super appreciate that. Again, it's really important. I think I've had a heart event in my life, so I'm very sensitive to people's health these days. If the heart's not working well, as you know, nothing seems to be working very well. So, and we're in an interesting time right now. There's no doubt about that, Rollin. I know that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on. There's just so much going on in the world, and I'm thinking people are feeling a little out of sync. We're all feeling this anxiety. We all know what we're talking about. We don't never need to go down to, I think the people that I'm referring to and the circumstances, we all know what we're talking about, but there's this angst in the world. I live in Canada. You live in the United States. If you live in North America in general, you know that there's the tension that people are feeling. But, we need to figure out ways to communicate better. We need to figure out ways that we can make this part of our daily lives. So I just want to jump right in. I'm going to ask everyone, please go to the website to learn more about HeartMath specifically. There's so much you can learn about HeartMath. There's the website right there. If you're listening on 347 The Juice, it's www.heartmath.org. You'll learn so much about Rollin's work and all that HeartMath does. So in the meantime, though, we're going to jump right into the subject matter. Rollin, let's talk a little bit about just quickly HeartMath and the work that it's done, and then we'll jump into coherence. But tell me what the most recent stuff you've been working on with HeartMath.
Well, okay. So most recent stuff, and that's going to, without connecting a bunch of dots, this may not make a lot of sense to some of the listeners, but we actually just had three things I'll mention. We just had two of our research papers published in one of the Nature journals, Scientific Reports. It's one of the most referenced journals in the world, actually. And it's kind of rare to have two papers published in a journal like that within a few weeks of each other, but that just happened.
Fantastic.
And one of them, probably the most relevant for the kind of topics we like to talk about here, was where we measured the heart rhythms, or heart rate variability, to be more precise, of 5 groups of people, with 20 people in each group, in 5 countries around the world. So there was a group in England, a group in Lithuania, Saudi Arabia, New Zealand, and California. Is that 5? I don't know.
That sounds like
sounds about right. Anyway, so
right.
A lot of heart. So we measured continuously their heart rate variability, 24 hours a day for 15 days, a little over 2 weeks. Now, we might have talked about one of the outputs of that study in the last show. I don't remember, but just to do a very quick review, Peter, we found that we were really and these are also areas of the world where we have what's called the global monitoring system magnetometers, which measure the Earth's magnetic field, the rhythms and frequencies in the Earth's vibrating fields, magnetic fields. I'm not going to go too much into that right now, but what we found was that there are very strong and clear interactions between the field environment we live in and people's heart rhythms or physiology. But we had them do what's called a heart lock-in. It's one of the HeartMath techniques where you really get into a heart coherent state for about, in this case, 15 minutes. And we just had them actually feel and experience love and appreciation for all the other group members, in their group of 20, but also the global group. So they all did this at the same time. And this is what was published like at least a year ago now, the first study. I'm going to get to the more exciting one here in a second. But what they found is that they became more heart coherent individually. The synchronization between literal heart-to-heart synchronization between the group members was significantly increased, and that was true of all the groups. But the surprise out of that study was that it, at the group level, increased the members of the group synchronization with the rhythms of the Earth significantly, a huge effect over the next 24 hours. So just being in that heart coherent state for 15 minutes increased our own interconnection with our own larger self. That's the way I like to say it, and a lot of health benefits, of course, from that, but also got us more in sync with others, right? And we know that physiologically being in sync with others is the ground state, maybe I should say it that way, that really promotes pro-social behaviors. We get along better. We're kinder to each other. Better communication, these types of things. So it's really grounded in that capacity of being in sync with not only within ourselves, but with others. But the fact that they were more in sync with the Earth for the following 24 hours was a surprise. I didn't expect that.
Wow.
I think most people intuitively get that it's good to be in sync, right?
Yes. Right.
Right. So, but being in sync with the Earth is a big deal. Because that is so many studies showing that when let's say the frequencies or the rhythms in the Earth's field are disturbed, like a solar flare hits us or something, that has a lot of detriments to our own health and well-being. Hundreds of studies show this. But when we're in sync, there's a whole new kind of, I'll say, genre of studies now showing why it's good to be in sync. It's almost like being in sync with the Earth's field is like an energy source for us.
Right.
But with the new study, okay, of that same data set.
Yes.
We looked to see how in sync were the group members across the entire 2-week period, not necessarily in sync with the Earth like we did in the other study. Now, so synchronization, physiological synchronization, is a relatively new field of study, Peter, but there's already enough. I've got a stack of papers over here to my right, about 2 feet high, of synchronization papers, but it's still relatively new. And most studies to look at getting people in sync physiologically, our heart rhythms in sync, our brain waves synchronized, these types of things, are almost all of them looking at where you do something to, say, induce synchronization. We sing together, we dance together, we solve a puzzle together, so they're fairly short time. And those studies clearly show that being in sync is really important for performance, getting along, better communication, these types of things. This study was really different and unique because we looked at, you could think of it as free running. We weren't doing anything to try and get them to be synchronized. And we, instead of just looking over a few minutes or maybe an hour like most studies, we looked over the entire 2-week period, 15 days.
Right. No, again, is that 2 weeks prior to them getting to it? It's during the monitoring, like
it's during the 2-week monitoring period.
Right.
Okay. And all 5 groups. Now, most people wouldn't expect there to be any synchronization because remember, across 2 weeks, these people, it's not like they're in a room together holding hands or something for 2 weeks. Right. No, they're going about their normal lives. Okay. Different jobs, different things, all that. They just happen to be in the same group in the same geographical area. So when we looked, a lot of deep analysis and mathematics went on here to do this, but that doesn't matter. But what we found was that 2 of the 5 groups were actually synchronized. Their heart rhythms were synchronized over the entire 2-week period.
Wow.
Now, 3 weren't, 2 were. Now, what was different about the groups? Next question, right?
Right. Well, yeah. Why would 3 specifically and 2 and what? Yeah.
Yeah.
What,
right. Well, the 2 that were synchronized or in sync were the 2 groups that had a high degree of social connection between the group members. They knew each other.
They had higher than the other groups.
Yeah, much higher.
Much higher.
Yeah, okay. They knew each other, right? They liked each other, that kind of thing. The other 3 groups, the people didn't know each other for the most part. They were just random kind of members. They weren't they didn't know each other and had that social connection. So it was actually kind of hard to get that published in that journal. One of the reviewers didn't think this was possible and put our analysis team through the ringer. He finally gave up and said, yeah, the data is real, but I've tried to make you do everything to make it go away that I could think of. Excuse me.
And that's the great thing about science, right, Roland? I mean, people try to disprove, but this is backed by science. That's what's so great about this information. Yeah. Keep going. I love that.
Well, okay. So what this suggests, and it's not the only kind of set of data that suggests what I'm about to say, Peter, is that when we are in a group over time where you have, say, positive emotional connections, right? What's happening is that you form I'm going to say the word literal, group level field that non-locally interconnects all the group members where we share energy and information amongst the group.
Wow.
Okay. Now, I think what I'm going to make a prediction here, and that is that what we'll see in future research, that it is this kind of field or group synchronization that distinguishes your really high-performing groups or teams from those that are, average, mediocre, whether that's a concert, an orchestra, a sports team, right? A leadership team, whatever, family, right? That this is formed at. This group field. Now, one of the ways that people commonly experience this in terms of HeartMath practices is when they're together at an event or even on Zoom, and we do one of these practices like a heart lock-in or one of the coherence practices, is that and they're using one of the devices to measure their coherence and heart rhythm coherence, is
Right.
it's a lot easier to shift into coherence and sustain it when they're part of the group versus when they're off on their own. It's a lot more challenging for them. So there's a very, we've observed that for years, and a lot of our trainers observe that as well. So this is really putting sort of science to, I think, kind of, you asked me what's one of the new studies and leading edge things.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. This is just one of the things, but it bridges right directly into what, one of the, purposes of us getting together again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, is that there's this anxiety in the world. So I don't want to jump away from that, what you just said there. There's 5 groups of people around the world, and it was showing the interconnectedness of those groups, and then how they were interconnected throughout those 2 weeks, and then you went right into where I kind of was hoping we would jump into, which is the whole idea of coherence, and the idea of coherence, and how then people can practice it. Again, I've talked to you enough, and I've researched enough of your studies and so on to understand a little bit about coherence, and the idea that it's a synchronized it's system of heart and brain and nervous system and hormones and all kinds of different things that come together. And I just want you, if you can we move into that, right?
Sure.
To talk about the coherence part of this that you just spoke of, about those 5 groups. What was interesting, though, what you just said, before we move from that particular study, is that you said that the groups that were more coherent with each other, in sync with each other, had a familiarity with each other. So they spoke together before, perhaps. Maybe they spent time together before.
That's right.
Versus building a team. So I think that's fascinating, because it's kind of the world we live in right now, isn't it? Where people are trying to put together groups of people to work together and trying to find that coherence when they don't really know each other and stuff, versus people who kind of know each other can build it quicker. But can we jump right to some of that about coherence? And
are you asking what's coherence? Or
you know what? Let's if you want to define it for us. I know, again, it has so many components of heart, brain, nervous system, hormones, and why it's important about coherence. Jump to that.
Well, I think most people probably have an intuitive sense of coherence, that it's a good thing, right? But it's more than a concept. It's a thing that we measure in science, from the very small to the scale of the universe, this idea of coherence. So when we talk about coherence, usually we're talking about how well the parts of a larger system work together or not in harmony. So in other words, if you take the human body, I mean, you've got to have coherence for everything to work together, right? So that's really what we're talking about. How is the harmonious activity among all the parts of a complex system working together? Now, there's a lot implied by this. So for that to occur, there has to be some type of communication, right, between all the parts. They have to be able to talk to each other. And that can happen on many different ways and different levels. It can be chemical, electromagnetic, even quantum level connections, like in the case I was just talking about with the groups. There has to be some signal communicating for that coherence. So the more coherent a system is, the more energy efficient it is. And another really important aspect of coherence is that it's embedded and implied in that term, is that the wholeness, or the output, is greater than the sum of the parts, right? Something greater emerges by all the things working together harmoniously. Right. So it's a term that we introduced back in the 90s to describe how well the parts within our own body are working together. So it includes everything, right? From the cells to the organs, to how the organs working together. But what's the key driver and measure of coherence is how the heart and brain are working together. Heart and brain are, I think, pretty easy to understand how they're your primary. I mean, you got to have all the parts of a body to be whole and alive and healthy, but the heart and brain are the key organs in that, right? And that the heart and brain are more interconnected through the nervous system than any other systems in our body. And a lot of people don't realize that the heart sends far more information through the nervous system to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. Right. So the rhythms of the heart you can think of as the conductor of how coherent all the systems are in the body. Okay.
Right.
Now that's, not a lot of controversy around that really. There's a long history of research on this. So I'm talking, the heart and brain communicate in multiple ways, but I'm talking through the nerves that connect us now. So the nerves that connect the heart and brain, 80 to 90% of those neural fibers, and there's thousands of them, are going upstairs, ascending. It's only 10% brain down. So these neural signals the heart sends to the brain have profound influences on brain function. They go to the major brain centers that involve how in sync the neurons in our brain are. So that directly affects things like decision making, our ability to focus, our memory capacity for retrieving memories, but especially our capacity to self-regulate. In other words, be in control of our emotional diet, right?
Right.
Maintain our center when the chaos is out there. Foresight, these types of things. But the other neural pathways go to the part of the brain called the amygdalas, right? There's two of them. And that's the center for emotional experience. I mean, think of it, Peter. I assume you're married, right?
Good assumption. But I like the way you said it. I assume.
Well, I ask you that. Well, when you fell in love, did you ask your wife or your girlfriend, did you tell her, I love you with all my brain?
No.
Probably wouldn't go over real well.
Yeah,
right?
I wouldn't have won her over anyway, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But no, I did not.
Wow.
You're right. You never speak. I never
Right.
speak.
So we have an intuitive sense that there's something more about the heart than just a pump, right?
Yes.
And that's what we associate love with that feeling we have in the area of the heart. And that's sending a very different, we call coherent signal now to the brain, which it's then interpreting, right, as how we feel.
Right.
So it'd take an hour to unpack all these quick one-liners I'm giving you here, but there's very good science for all this.
I so appreciate you saying that, because I remember the last time we spoke, and I was listening to some of the rebroadcasts, and I mean this sincerely. Every time any subject you kind of bring up in this conversation could be a 2-hour, conversation. And so I don't want to minimize the importance of what we're covering. And at the same time, I want to encourage people to go out to heartmath.org and learn a little bit more about it. Let me put a couple things that I heard you say together and see if you can, again, bring it down to the daily lives of the things that we're dealing with today. I mean, we're dealing with a lot of fear, anxiety, emotions today. So you talked about, and I don't know if you noticed a comment that was put up there, and I appreciate the people that are tuning in, by the way. You're all the people tuning in from around the world, so I appreciate that. Melody is down in the Massachusetts area, and she said, sounds like coherence is alignment. So I think that's kind of what you said, and let me expand on that a little bit, and then you can help me. If coherence is described as alignment, where you're aligning the brain, the heart, your emotions, you're able to kind of put those in alignment with each other. If this is new for somebody who's hearing this right now in our conversation, how would you explain the feeling or experience of, say, coherence on a daily basis or in your daily life? Where does that show up? How do you
come
conscious of that?
Boy, there's so many ways I could answer that. And alignment is a good term. So coherence actually embraces a lot of things, alignment being one of them. Synchronization, entrainment, all these terms are different aspects of coherence, right? Which is the larger kind of umbrella for that. Alignment certainly a perfectly good way. And one of the things I often talk about, or we talk about here, is how aligned. Let's kind of simplify it: heart and mind. Okay. Now, I would invite maybe you, Peter, and the listeners here to just think back. Could even be recently, but sometime in our history when we might have been asked to do something, or the mind, we wanted to do something. It could be buy something new, or it could be end or start a new relationship, or whatever. Everything in life, we go through this filter I'm talking about. But we had a deeper inner feeling and sense that wasn't the right choice.
Yeah.
Follow where I'm going with that?
Yes. If to me, I always refer to it as my gut. It's a gut feed.
Well, I'm going to argue that it's actually heart.
Okay.
Right? And we can go another step on that. I can actually prove that scientifically, by the way. So heart mind, you're right. The mind wants something and the heart's giving you a deeper inner signal that, yeah, maybe that's not the right choice. Or it could be the other way around. It could be, you get a heart directive that you should do something. But then what I'd like to invite you to do is think back when we followed the mind and ignored that deeper signal. If we're really honest, how does that turn out for most people?
Yeah, usually not very good. Just speak for myself. I'll speak for myself. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think we can all relate to that. So that lack of alignment is really, from my perspective, by far the largest hidden source of stress and really fear as well on the planet. And it's a disconnection between the heart's intuitive guidance, and we can go into that in a minute. That separation, that disconnection, is creating a lot of personal stress, but then that also manifests as disconnection between others, between people, which is, I think, rampant right now. It's actually getting to the scale of countries. It's really out of hand. So it's really that separation and disconnection is the biggest problem we face right now as humanity, both from our own internal higher level systems and with others. We got to basically learn how to get along with each other.
Boy, you just touched these are the things that I really wanted to touch literally upon and hear from you on this, because there's a scientific approach to it. Can I ask you, let me ask you this, and I don't know if you can point to research on it, but it's based on things we're talking about. First of all, heart coherence and coherence, sort of the same. Anytime you refer to heart coherence, we're talking about that work that you do between.
Yeah. So good question, Peter. So I kind of gave the higher level idea of what coherence is. Now, the way that's reflected in our body, one of the best ways to see how coherent or incoherent we are within that, and this is, you look at the rhythms of the heart. Now, that's really important, but again, this is one of those things that would take a long time to unfold. But the way that we got started on this, maybe this will help connect some dots, is back in the 90s, when we were looking at all the physiological measures, brain waves and hormones and electrocardiograms and all this stuff we looked at over the years. We were doing studies to look at different emotional states. How does feeling, whether it's frustration or impatience or anger, what does that do? How does that manifest physiologically? But we were among the first to really take a serious look at emotions like appreciation, compassion, kindness. What happens when we feel those things to our physiology? And at that time, in the early 90s, there were hardly any research papers on what we could call positive emotions, thousands on stress, anxiety, and so on. And that's what led to coherence, because we found that when we really have I'll call them heartfelt feelings, right, of gratitude or appreciation, kindness. Here's a simple example. You walk out the door in the morning, and it's just one of those gorgeous days, right? The blue skies are blue, the right temperature, and you just go, oh, God, what a beautiful, you have that inner feeling.
Yeah.
So that's really that kind of our appreciation. We may not sit there and think that I'm appreciating, but you are.
Right.
That's the feeling you have.
That connectedness, you literally feel like you're part of it as opposed to viewing it. You can. Yeah,
but that takes us that shifts our physiology into coherence. We literally get more in sync internally, and that is reflected by these kind of sine wave or rolling hill looking patterns in our heart rhythm. Right?
Wow.
So that started a very long career of really understanding how and why that's going on. So when the heart rhythm is incoherent, kind of a jaggy looking rhythm, a good analogy for this is, quite literally our internal, the activity in our higher brain is out of sync, right? It's kind of jammed up as a way of thinking of it. And that's reflected in these incoherent rhythms. Now, when we're feeling positive things, I call it regenerative emotions, it's not good or bad. That takes us into being more in sync inside of our systems between the heart and brain and all the glands and organs. And that's health promoting, gives us more energy, but we especially get more in sync in our higher brain systems. So now we're more interconnected, right, with our higher intelligence that can make better choices. Now I have to add one thing here. Just something I said earlier. Peter, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we've heard most from really many years ago and still to this day about people who start practicing these techniques to shift into coherence is that they say, my intuition, it's on steroids. I mean, it's not subtle. It's a big difference, right?
Right.
And then usually the second thing is they start talking about synchronicities have now become a way of life. It's just amazing how this dramatic change. So we did back in the late 90s, actually, we did a series of very rigorous laboratory-based studies to measure intuition.
Okay.
And it's all published in peer-reviewed journals for people that want to go read details. But what we found was that the heart is the first to get the information, the non-local, say, about future events and things, intuition. The heart sends a measurably different neural pattern of information to the brain. This is all before, say, a future event in this research paradigm we were talking about that we could control. And then you get a body response, right? So the gut feeling of the hair on the back of the neck.
Right.
Because that's when it becomes the change in physiology, hair on the back of the neck, gut feeling. It's when it becomes a consciously perceived feeling.
Okay.
But it's really heart first, then brain, then body, if we're paying attention.
Right. And of course, we always think it's the other way around. I mean, we always think we either physically see something, hear something, or experience something through our brains.
Well, that's also true. I'm talking about now a more intuitive thing. But
okay, fair enough. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, most of the time we see things and all that. So you would have those kind of responses. So what this... the way I got that published back in, we may have covered this on a previous show. I don't know. I don't remember, Peter, but was that the heart appears to have access to a field of information outside the boundaries of time and space. So that was perfectly acceptable language back then in the late 90s for peer-reviewed scientific papers. I've kind of gotten old enough now and well published enough. I can kind of say what I want. To be honest.
You've earned it. You've earned it, sir. You've earned it.
We think of a field of information outside the boundaries of time and space. Well, what I was really saying in kind of scientific code there was what a lot of people would call your higher self.
Right.
Or others might call it connecting with your soul or your spirit, or in some cultures, or you might call it the God within. It doesn't matter what you call it. Here at HeartMath, we just call it your larger self. Because the one thing I can say pretty confidently, Peter, is that we are multidimensional beings. Any living system really has to be, right? So there's an energetic component, which we can talk about electromagnetically and photonically, these things that we can now measure, that are kind of the glue that holds us together in a way. I mean, what's guiding all the cells? Why does, because the skin cell in my hand is not the same skin cell that was there a month ago.
Right.
Right. So where's the blueprint for that?
Right.
It's clearly not the DNA. I mean, the DNA's got its role, obviously, but so I'm kind of being a little bit rambly here. I hope that I can connect the dots here. But what that line of research, which has actually been verified now in other labs that I was talking about, is that we have really two hearts. We have the physical heart, and we have what I call or not just me, I'm not the first to call it this, but the energetic heart, where it's also been called the spiritual heart, and like some spiritual traditions for at least 1,000 years. So what I'm suggesting is that's real, right? The energetic heart is a real thing. It's very complex. It just exists at the energetic level, which so we still can't put the energetic systems under microscopes, right?
Right.
You can't put a thought or an intuition or an emotion under a microscope. All we can measure is the physiological changes they lead to.
Right.
So let me give you an example here. So if you talk to a biochemist, like a friend of mine that's now passed away, 𝗂𝗶𝘃𝗵 comes to mind. She wrote the Molecules of Emotion. It was her book back in the 80s. I think it was the 80s. Anyway, maybe it was 90s. Anyway, from her perspective, emotion's all about hormones, right? Okay, yeah, well, she's
I
not
mean,
wrong, but she's not right either.
but she's partly right. I mean, hormones obviously when they're unbalanced or out of
Yeah,
sync.
yeah. In other words, hormones do play a key role in emotional experience.
Sure,
Yes,
sure.
but there's more to the story. Is my point. Now, you
Okay.
talk to a neuroscientist, emotions are all about nervous system activity, right? What's
Right.
going on in the brain and the nervous system that then lead to hormonal changes,
Ah,
right?
right.
Okay, they're right too,
Right. Okay. I see where you're going. Okay.
right?
Okay.
But I'm also going to suggest that's not complete either. We also have the energetic level. And as people practice the coherence skills, a lot of people start becoming more self-aware and more sensitive. So when you tune in a bit more and you actually practice, I would invite listeners to try this, and is becoming more even self-aware energetically. You start to discover and can actually feel that, let's say, an emotional reaction, or it could be a positive thing. We start to feel love for someone. That actually happens energetically first. Then the
Right.
energetic systems are in touch with, are really regulating neural activity, in the fields, domains. So it's energetics, then neural, then hormonal. So the emotional system is far more complex than one of these simple,
Yeah.
it's across scales and cross levels. All right. So as we become more self-aware of what's happening energetically, it's a lot easier to shift things at that level before it gets down deeper into physiological changes. Because once you've secreted hormones like cortisol or these types of things,
Sure.
those are now they're in the blood, they're in the system. They take time to clear, so it's
Yes.
harder to turn those around.
Yeah. Once you get some of those chemicals like dopamine,
Yeah,
oxytocin, serotonin,
all
endorphin,
that stuff, right?
all
Yeah,
that stuff will trigger
yeah.
all kinds of different
Well,
reactions.
they don't trigger it. They're the end result that actually helps support the physical feeling of
Oh,
whether it's anger or love or whatever.
right. Okay. No, you're right. I stand corrected. It's backwards on that, isn't it? You have an emotion, and then those
Yeah.
are the response to that, and then it's in your system,
Yeah, and
which
then it's creating the physiological feelings that we can perceive, right? The gut feeling, like we were talking about, or the
sure,
tension in your shoulders, or whatever that response is. Or for some people, if it's what I call depleting emotions, it usually leads to some type of physical symptom of stress.
right.
One of the biggest ones, or most common, is sleep disruption. We can't sleep well. But it can be, the tension in the body, headaches, stomach problems, right?
Yes.
All these things are physical manifestations of those. And in the case of depleting or stressful emotions that are creating that incoherence I was talking about. And remember,
Yeah.
I said coherence, one of the key things is energy, efficient use of energy. So when that incoherent state, we are literally using energy inefficiently. And it's why people are so many people, I would say, in today's world, I ask this a lot. Do you have as much energy as you would like to have at the end of the day to do the things you enjoy? Or you could ask it, how many would like more energy? About everybody raises their hand.
Right.
And this is because so much, Peter, really, it's emotions that run the show physiologically is what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah.
And this is so easy to prove here in the lab. We can have you wired up to all the stuff we measure, brain waves and heart rhythms and skin conductance and hormonal and immune system parameters, all this stuff. And, you can be thinking and we call it stressors, right? Like subtract numbers in your head, serial 7 subtraction, things like this.
Mm.
Yeah, you can measure some changes, but they're really quite trivial compared to once you trigger an emotion. You get embarrassed because I'm not good at doing mental subtractions, and you feel that, or you feel frustrated or impatient about it, or that sets in motion all this biochemistry,
Right.
right? That is not the thoughts, it's the emotion that run the show. On the other hand, if I do something or you self-induce feelings, well, God, I really appreciate, and I sincerely appreciate hanging out with you today. I don't have to make that up. I feel that.
I
right?
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's great. Me,
right. Or you love someone, or you're extending compassion or compassionate latitude, or extending kindness. Well, guess what? That's also manifesting a very different set of neural activity and hormonal patterns that renew energy and actually feel good when we, at the level of perception.
yeah.
Is this making any sense to you, Peter?
Hey, listen, I'm less worried about, when I say less. First of all, yes, it makes sense to me. I'm not going to pretend that everything you said totally connected. I'm still, there's so much to unpack. That's why I love having these conversations. I record them, and we'll definitely be replaying them for people to listen to as well. Again, it's just so fascinating that we can tie these things scientifically, which takes away all the sort of the idea that, oh, that's just your feelings, that's just your emotions. It's much broader than that. What I want to do right now, Roland, because I'm very conscious of your time, I know that you have another meeting coming up very shortly, so I have a very few minutes left with you, and I wanted to ask you this because, again, the elephant in the room is that the world is feeling, or individuals are feeling. I shouldn't say the world. Sounds like I don't know what everyone is feeling, but I sure know that I have been feeling different over the last 60 days, certainly. And I think it's hard for people to ignore because it's in every headline, it's on every social media thing, it's everywhere you see. So I think people are feeling this angst and anxiousness.
Yeah, I just read, to your point, this morning when I came in, I had an email and a link to a brand new survey.
Okay.
And I don't have the website up now, but it was an organization that specifically looks at measuring fear.
Okay.
And there's a new survey out from also the American Psychological Association that just came out. They've been doing annual, measures around the world of stress, anxiety for many years. It's the first time I'd run across this one that's for 10 years been measuring literally fear and different types of fear. And I was surprised. Well, I shouldn't be, though. Out of this brand new survey of Americans anyway, and it's probably not that different for Canadians and others around the world, 65% of Americans, their number one fear is political corruption.
Wow.
I know. 65% of the respondents across different ages and types of people in the United States. That's the number one fear right now.
Right now. So it was measured. It's a brand new report that's out probably in the last. They probably took that poll over the last couple of weeks, maybe the last 3 days or so. Yeah.
They had other things that were up there. Were fear of losing a death of a loved one dying was up in the top 5. I wish I had the list up, but it was really interesting.
And is that because it's top of mind, right? I mean, it's in your face. Yeah. Is that? I mean, that's where I was going with this. I mean, you're right. I mean, just like you said, to have 2/3 roughly, if you're saying 2/3 of people are saying, using the word politics, if you will, inside of where the emotion of fear and anxiety. What I want to tie it back to coherence, because I want them to hear it scientifically from you and somebody who teaches courses and programs on this. Let me ask you this question, if we could leave them even with this, and keeping that in mind, just what you just said, that there's 2/3 of people have politics and corruption and that kind of fear and anxiety in their head right now. So if they're feeling emotionally depleted right now, they're feeling broken, right? They're feeling overwhelmed. Am I going to keep my job? Am I going to even stay in this country? All those things, they're feeling overwhelmed. How can they start building that inner battery, that connection?
Yeah. What a great question. And it's what HeartMath's all about. We've talked a lot about science and new things. We have to also, before we leave, talk about the new tree study thing we did, just because that's one of my favorite new results. But so HeartMath is really about a number of about 8 core really coherence practices that are really focused on how do we become more self-aware of when I'm feeling something like impatience or frustration or disconnection. How do we shift our physiology into this optimal state of coherence, right? And how do I do it right in the moment?
Yes.
And this is one of the beauties of the HeartMath techniques. We've put a lot of attention and care into making these techniques simple.
Okay.
In fact, that's where some people at first glance will miss the power of HeartMath. Well, this is so simple. How can this work? Right.
Right.
But a lot of science and a lot of research behind some simple techniques.
Yes.
And I'll share just the first step. Usually the techniques have 3 or more steps, but the first step, a lot of people is transformational, just the first step. And that's called heart-focused breathing.
Heart-focused breathing.
Heart-focused breathing. And heart-focused breathing, you focus your attention. You really want to put your attention right here in the center of your chest. Okay. And imagine that your breath is flowing in and out of the chest or heart area. Now you breathe a little slower and deeper than normal, and find a rhythm that's comfortable. Okay. Now this is something you have to breathe anyway, right?
Right. Yes.
We're not asking people to take more time out of their day. This is something you can do when you're driving, when you're in a meeting, when you're on a phone call. You just start putting that attention. Now I'll unpack just a little bit of that simple technique. We actually have, physiologically speaking, a literal resonant frequency in terms of our physiology. And this has to do with the neural activity and blood flow rhythms and things between the heart, lungs, and brain. And in fact, one of the other papers we just published was looking at 1.8 million HRV recordings to determine the most common resonant frequencies, globally around humanity. And the most common resonant frequency that we have is, in frequency language, 0.1 hertz. Now, what that translates to in time, Peter, is a rhythm or a cycle every 10 seconds. So breathing, say 4 or 5 seconds on the in-breath,
right,
4 or 5 seconds on the out-breath, not holding your breath in between, just that easy rhythm around that frequency. We're now breathing at our natural physiological resonant frequency, or coherence frequency, we also call it. We have a literal frequency where coherence occurs. But now it's going to be a little different for everybody, even though the center of the bell curve is that 10-second rhythm. So I would say breathe, find the rhythm that's most comfortable. It's going to be somewhere around that rhythm with practice. Now, it might feel uncomfortable for some at first because the brain it's not familiar yet because we're so disassociated from our own natural resonant frequency. But if just practicing that, maybe it's in traffic, right?
Right.
Traffic lights are all green. Hey, we're flowing, but then boom, we hit the traffic jam.
Right.
Right. What do? Most of us? Frustration, impatience. So you just set in motion all of those depleting neurochemicals and getting the brain out of desync. We can't think clearly, etc. Well, okay. That's not going to make the traffic move any faster.
No.
Do heart-focused breathing.
Right.
Take advantage of that time to add energy, to add clarity into the system.
I know it feels as you just said, it pointed out earlier, it feels simple, and some people might just miss that as a quote unquote a technique. But based on the science, as you said, say every 10 seconds, if you can find that rhythm, right, which is it's universal. It's a universal pattern, is it not? That
global, and even animals have the same resonant frequency for the most part.
Wow.
So it's scale invariant, but the focus of the heart is important. It's not just breathing, right? So a lot of people talk about abdominal breathing or this kind of thing, and that's all great. Anything where you take steps to self-regulate is awesome, but there is a reason for that focus in the heart area. And then in this case, we're wanting to shift the rhythms of the heart into that coherent state. So where we focus attention, we can cause specific physiological changes, right? And there's also an energetic reason as well there. But now a little more advanced version of this is, as you're doing the heart-focused breathing, activate a feeling. Okay, because the breathing, that's grandma's wisdom in a certain way, right? It'll take the intensity out of the emotion. So once we've done that, we can now make that energetic shift I was talking about earlier, Peter. So consciously activate a feeling of kindness, right, or appreciation, or you can just breathe a feeling of calm, right, or ease. So now you've taken the depleting emotion or stressful emotion and taken the intensity out enough, you can now energetically shift it. So this is not about suppressing. It's about transforming the energy of the emotion from one that takes us out of sync and depletes to one that takes us to be more synchronized and adds energy to our system and alignment.
Right. And that's, again, it's funny, we were talking about using traffic as the example, and today, things are being triggered very easily simply by, these things, these cell phones, these,
Sure.
social media. You're scrolling through things. People are tuning into things they're not normally tuning into. For example, they're following maybe events that are going on in Canada, for example.
Sure.
Right now, we're going through the next 35 to 40 days of an election, for example, which means that people are going to be talking about things that are not normally daily with the intensity of it. So that's what I was getting at with this idea that how do we, find how do we use these techniques right in the moment so that we can find that coherence that you referred to, where we feel we're more in sync with the goodness that's out there, as opposed to, gosh, what's being amplified right now. Does that sort of make sense?
It makes total sense.
Yeah. I know that I've been speaking to a lot of different people just about what they're feeling now. And I keep referring to this idea that, like you said, we need to figure out ways to know that we're more connected than we're not. And
exactly.
maybe the HeartMath techniques are a nice, simple introduction.
Well, it's not the only system out there or only way, but it's one that we have a lot of science, 500 plus studies to suggest that it actually works.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of good systems out there, and people are going to resonate with different approaches. What you're saying, Peter, it's really interesting that a lot of the people I know that, are part of the HeartMath staff and things, I've never ran into so many people that the stress is at a level now in their lives that's kind of crossed their capacity to deal with it. And I think and I hear that from people all around the world. This is not just, the US and Canada, which is, crazy what's going on from my perspective, but it's global, and it's leading to this disconnection. And I would say even if we look energetically at the planetary level of consciousness, it's a drop in just kind of global dignity and basic civility is going on.
Right.
So it's more important than ever that people really learn these tools, these techniques, start taking charge of their own system and fears. Because, fear, like I said, 65% of U.S. feeling a lot of fear. The judgments, anxiety, these are exactly the types of emotions that drive the system into incoherence.
Yes.
And over time, that's going to play out in, sometimes serious health challenges, and that disconnection with others. So this is really important from a global perspective. And we didn't get into today. I know, like we've talked about in past episodes, how we literally radiate measurable magnetic fields. We can measure that carry this emotional information, and that connects with the global field. So it's more important than ever that one of my closing kind of thoughts here would be in really inviting listeners to, pause as often as you can remember to throughout the day, and find ways to remind yourself to pause and just do an inner check and ask yourself, what am I feeding the field, my energetic field? Is it vibrations? They really are vibrations. That's a whole other, we'll have to do another show sometime. We'll talk about vibrations of emotions, but are they the kind of vibrations of fear, frustration, anxiety, overwhelm? Right?
Yeah, I appreciate you really focusing in on that, Roland, what you just said there, that it's global. It's more important, it's so important for us that are aware of these things, that we're putting it into that field of consciousness. Because to be blunt, and I'll just try to be, unscientific here, which I am, there's a lot of powerful energy out there that is contrary to everything we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it has people's attention. And as you suggested, it just has risen, even the most self-aware person, it has risen their ability to.
Well, yeah, it's just so much of that being, because we're all individuals in a larger interconnected field. So as more and more people are feeling the fears, the judgments, the frustrations, that's feeding the field, and that affects everybody, right? So on the other hand, though, the more that of us that can come together, and this is a lot of what we HeartMath do with the global coherence and global consciousness projects, the more we can feed the field love, truly higher frequencies, truly heart coherent levels, frequencies of love, compassion, kindness, that also goes into the field. Now, one of the things about coherence is it organizes noise.
Right.
It's a signal that cuts through. I mean, even if we're talking about a radio transmitter, it has to be a coherent signal to become a standing wave and broadcast. Right.
Sure.
So the more we can do that, especially together, you mentioned earlier, more and more groups are forming together with positive intention. And that's awesome, right? That's happening, because that's more and more of those coherent signals that we're collectively putting into the field environment to help offset, right, all the lower frequency vibrations that are going on.
Oh man, you are so right. You know what? I'm going to chat with you offline about, we need to do this more regularly on, like, hey, maybe a radio station. We need to do this on a regular basis, because I feel I need to use my voice to amplify others. I know you have a lot of outlets for what you do, but I always love playing a small role and part in what you are trying to share with the world. And I always so appreciate your time. I just want to mention a couple of very quick things to you, because I know that they're such big fans. So I'm going to give you an example of a person. She's taking one of your courses right now. She just started the other day. She's from here in Canada, and she's just a great soul, an amazing person. I just want to put her name up. 𝗂𝗏𝘃𝗵 Williamson. She's just started one of your courses through HeartMath this week. So to tie in with her coaching business and all that kind of stuff. So she just started one right now. So she's a big fan of everything to do with HeartMath, and actually doing the course right now as we speak. And Melody is down in Massachusetts. She always puts out good energy to the world. Rollin, I just want to mention her. She talks a lot about helping veterans, and other people talk about PTSD and those kinds of things, and how do you relieve that kind of tension in your life and those kinds of things. Bill Bradford is another person in the Pittsburgh area. I know that he's sending you great soul right there. So as you talked about, is just bringing these tribes of people together so that we can have that energy that we need. And I just love that stuff. So I just want to mention them to you. There's a lot of fans out there of you. I'm a fan. I wanted to make sure you knew that a lot of people just love what you're talking about, and they're picking up on all this energy. And we really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. For everybody else right now, we have to let Rollin get to his next event. He's always doing something. So if he's not researching and reading something, he's talking about it. I so appreciate you talking to us today. Rollin, I want to mention to everybody that's listening on 347, if you can't see what I'm putting up, the website is www.heartmath.org. HeartMath is a nonprofit, right, Rollin? So I want to yes, sir.
And well, I mean, you said that all of our research for the vast majority of it is all funded by donors. And so it's
there you have it. I wanted to mention that because for some reason, sometimes when organizations such as yourselves, people don't think that, I don't know what they think, but what they should know is that they can get involved. And if you're a business or an organization or in a situation where you're looking to support a nonprofit that is doing amazing work, there you go. There's HeartMath right there. So I want to throw that in there for you, Rollin, because I want to see you keep,
Peter. Yeah.
I want you to keep working and doing what you do. That is for sure. I so appreciate you being here, my friend. I can't tell you how much respect I have for you. I love chatting with you always.
I'm going to be a minute or two late for this other meeting I have to be at. But one thing we didn't mention that it's one of my favorite recent things.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Go ahead. The trees.
No, it's okay. It's not really this. Well, it's actually part of a much bigger project, because we're measuring the electrical activity of trees all around the world now. It's called the Global Tree Monitoring, and there's a website for it. It's called treerhythms.net.
Treerhythms.net. Okay, keep going.
So you can actually see the graph. I also posted this on my personal LinkedIn page a week or so ago. Well, we have there's trees all around the world hooked up, but we have 4 of them actually on the other side of this building I'm in right now that were planted, the same species, planted about, 20 some years ago. So four trees, pretty much identical. And they're all wired up to the electrical activity of this global network. So the experiment was that a small group, I think it was 6 to 8 people, went out every day for 10 minutes, took some chairs out, walked out, sat about 15 feet from one of the 4 trees, just randomly picked one tree, and basically just got coherent and sent love to the tree, right? For 10 minutes over 6 days. And the graph that we just kind of made available, it blew us away. Because you see three trees are the controls, and the trees have circadian rhythms and dynamic electrical activities. The tree that received the love had this just huge jump in its voltage and its circadian patterns and things. It was such a dramatic example of how what we feel inside is affecting other living systems in a very measurable and often dramatic way. So it's
wow.
It's one of those things that I think is really starting to resonate. And I posted it on my LinkedIn, and I think I don't know, within 2 days I had 3,500 responses, something like that, which is pretty
beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. Okay, so
I'd really invite people to take a look at that. If you don't believe this stuff, well, here's some pretty neat examples of how what we feed the field really does matter in measurable ways.
Right. Wow. I appreciate you sharing that. 𝗏rhythms.net. And we can read about it again. Go to his LinkedIn page as well, Dr. Rollin McCraty. You can find him on LinkedIn, and you're active on there. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing that. You did mention that a show or two ago, and I remember putting that on the burner. Let's return to that show. That needs to be a show. That one just talking about how we're feeding the fields and those kinds of things. And it does matter. And again, if people who don't sort of quote unquote believe it, science is science. You can measure it. So that's one of the things that I love about all of this that you share with us. Thank you, Rollin, for being here. I don't want to keep you any longer for your next meeting. I so appreciate everyone tuning in. We will get to your comments, and please support Rollin any way you can. Connect with him, heartmath.org. Go to his LinkedIn page as well. You know how this ends, Rollin. I mean, we just tell people, be kind out there. I mean, that's all you got to do.
Yep, exactly.
Be kind out there, everybody. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Rollin, we'll see you on the other side. Take care, everybody. Just be kind out there. That's all you have to do. Just be kind out there. I mean, that's all you have to do. Just be kind out there, everybody. I mean, just be kind. That's all you have to do. Just be kind out there, everybody. Hey, just be kind. You know the drill. Just be kind out there, everybody. Just be kind. Just be kind out there, everybody. That's all you have to do, right?
Exactly.
Just be kind out there, everybody.